Welcome back to the Hour of Wellbeing. So today I want to talk about a few things. I think this is going to be the way a lot of these videos happen is I have a few ideas and then making the video, hopefully we're going to bring them together into some kind of meaningful and useful whole. So narcissism, right? You hear a lot about, he's a narcissist. Just backpedaling a bit from that, have you noticed in politics, there tends to be this sense of like, I'm right, I'm good, I'm clever. They're wrong, they're bad, they're stupid. And there's this like kind of almost like a kind of binary, you've kind of got the angels and the demons. And we imagine ourselves to be the good guys, right? And anyone that disagrees must clearly be stupid. So that's to kind of give, or evil, right? That's to kind of give a kind of backdrop to this. And then the whole narcissist thing. Now, this is really, I think, is very kind of slightly, what am I trying to say here? It's potentially dangerous territory in some ways. And let me explain what I mean. So if we go around and we accuse someone of being a narcissist, then there's a few things that can happen. So we may be right, okay? They may be a narcissist. And therefore, we've identified someone who's likely to be toxic to us, and we've protected ourselves by applying the label, which has its place, right? There's nothing wrong with that as far as I'm concerned. But I think it's really important to understand the difference between reality, right? Okay, reality, and a model. So they have this thing in one teaching, I had some Buddhist teaching about, you got something in the middle of the room or this finger, and you got people looking at it from different angles, right? So, I think it was a bunch of flowers the teacher did this with. It's like everyone in the room was seeing it from a slightly different angle. So yeah, maybe there is a single absolute reality, but everyone's perspective on that reality is subjective. And I think it's really important to understand that this whole paradigm of trying to understand what's happening in terms of interpersonal dynamics through the lens of this pathologizing language. He's a narcissist. Yeah. He's gaslighting me. He's manipulative, or she, or them, whatever. So, okay, so that's a little bit of the picture, right? And then backpedaling again in a different direction, nonviolent communication. So in nonviolent communication, as taught by Marshall Rosenberg, which is an absolutely wonderful teaching, but again, it's not reality, it's a model. Okay, it's a particular lens you can look at the world through. So pathologizing language of things like narcissism and borderline personality disorder is one, there's my camera, is one kind of lens or one angle you can look at things through. But then there's this other one, which nonviolent communication gives us, which is very unusual. And again, it's not reality, it's just a lens, but it is so powerful and it is so life serving and so enriching. And so it's just wonderful. And that would be to look at things through the lens of our own needs and our own feelings. So if someone's behaving in a way that we're calling, let's say, manipulative, then maybe we've got a need for like autonomy and honesty and transparency. And we might feel frightened, confused, overwhelmed. Okay, so there's a whole language you need to kind of get into if you want to get into that way of doing things. So you need to have a needs literacy and a feelings literacy. But the point is, instead of being in this kind of pathologizing mindset of like, he's a narcissist, she's a narcissist, he's manipulating me, he's gaslighting me, you can actually completely bypass that entire process of diagnosing. So they talk in nonviolent communication about the 4 Ds. I think I've got them right in saying they are diagnosis, denial of responsibility, duty, and the other one, deserve. So if we're using those kind of thought processes and concepts to evaluate a situation, the chances are we're disconnected from what's really going on in us, and we're undermining our chances of having favourable outcomes for everyone concerned. So there's not that they're wrong, these 4 Ds, but they're things to be aware of and to look out for. And diagnosis in particular is so prevalent in the whole kind of, emotionally aware. So people are kind of getting into this stuff and they, maybe they haven't been brought up to be particularly aware of their emotions. And so they're learning this, and what they're finding in all the magazines and the blog posts and the textbooks, the paradigm of diagnosis, like, so this is what's wrong with that person. It can feel really empowering. It's like, yeah, I've got a label for this. Or maybe you're getting into autism and labels for autism, which is another discussion I'm not going to get into because I'm not particularly qualified on it. But my point is that labels are useful. There's nothing wrong with them, but they can be limiting, and they can actually, in my opinion, be like a kind of station on the journey, and they've got their use. But there's also, you can go further and you can probably resolve things better have better outcomes, have deeper understanding. If you don't get stuck at that particular station where I'm up in my head, I've got it's almost like doing mathematics with your emotions, right? So, I've got my particular trauma response, which then is interacting with that particular narcissistic trait, and therefore that means this is, and you're kind of doing it up in your head with this kind of calculating, how does that symptom fall out from that? And generally these blog posts and books and whatever articles and that, they won't even necessarily be suggesting that this might be the case. They'll have fallen into that other, for me, rather horrible kind of intellectual error of, inference is not evidence, right? So it's possible that there is that connection, but it's even probable, but don't go saying it's certain. Don't go believing it's certain. And another possible problem with this interpretation, this paradigm, this way of doing things is also, well, there's several, but one is that we might really alienate someone and we might not see our contribution to a situation because we've kind of polarized it. We've got this kind of binary interpretation. And so we're not necessarily recognizing our part in the situation. We're not owning what our experience is in terms of our needs and our feelings. And we may actually really wrong someone. We may be like, actually, it's all, you're doing this terrible thing, you're gaslighting me, whatever, you're manipulating me. And it's like, well, maybe I've got a problem setting boundaries. And that's my responsibility. And it's really easy to blame the other person for walking all over them. But have I looked at, my part in that? Yeah. And I think it's even possible, this is purely hypothetical, I do not know how likely it is to be true, but imagine you're someone that likes to use the term narcissist a lot. Is it possible that that is a narcissistic trait in itself? Because there is an inherent avoidance of responsibility in that use of term. And I don't mean that in a kind of blaming way. And again, the reason I preface this by saying it's potentially dangerous is because sometimes those labels protect us. Yeah, sometimes we just need a shortcut. We need like, there's a bottle and it's got poison in it and it says toxic, okay? And we don't need to be thinking, well, is it really toxic under this situation or that situation? Did I actually accidentally make that potion myself and forget it and leave it on the shelf? Okay, so I'm not saying that we shouldn't use these labels, but I'm saying that they are not the whole truth, and there can be a lot more than just the label going on. And in some ways they can actually not serve us. So I think, to use a lot of discernment is good in this situation. So this is, I think I've brought together the various threads that were kind of going through my mind about this. So the main theme really is, if we're evaluating, say we're having like difficult relationships for whatever reason, whether it's, partners, family, friends, whatever, and we're falling into the habit of trying to analyze with our minds, diagnosing what's wrong with this person, and that's why everything's terrible, because they're bad and I'm good. Just to kind of maybe dig a little bit deeper and, see if there's a different way of approaching it that includes an understanding of our own contribution, includes compassion for the other person. And I guess I'm motivated to say this because I've got a situation where these dynamics are going on and I'm having to, the tendency is to want to diagnose this other person. But I'm aware that in doing so, I could actually really damage the kind of heart connection, which is part of the picture. I mean, there's things are happening which I don't think should be happening, or I don't want to be happening, and I think it needs dealing with. But I don't want to just be like, shh, and therefore you're evil and I'm good, and that would not honor the relationship. So, in a way, it's a cautionary tale just for myself, but it might be of use to some of you listening. So the Tao of Wellbeing, I said it would be, in my introductory video, I said it would be a fairly eclectic mix of stuff. So this is very much kind of at the emotional well-being side and interpersonal, relationships and ways of handling disharmony in our relationships. I hope that was interesting and helpful to some of you. Please like and subscribe if you like this material, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.